All right, let's do it then. Cool. Well, welcome to Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die. What a start. Welcome to Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, a podcast telling the story of founders, investors and operators working to turn the world we live in into a better place. Butchered that intro twice in the one effort, but hopefully I can make up for it. So we have Andy Miller with us today. Andy, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Bill. Nice to be here.
Good stuff. Hey, before we dive into anything, we have a tradition at Too Rare to Die, and Wallo's going to welcome you in with a little song that he's prepared. So hope you're ready to be serenaded.
Yeah, I hope you came expectant. Okay, Matthias, please sit it. Let me tell you all a little story about a man named Miller, a Miller man on the moon, a Miller man on the moon with a mustache. That is a man, a Miller man on the moon, a Miller man on the moon with a mustache trying to make his quit pen. Oh. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that is a man. I met a man on the moon, yeah. I met a man on the moon with a mustache trying to make his quit bed. Ooh, yeah. There is a man. A Miller man.
You. What up, boy?
Thank you.
What a welcome.
Went very jazzy there, like maybe 70s jazz club, Yeah.
Sensual as always. Serenading. Good stuff. Andy, awesome to have you here. Such a fascinating startup that you have founded with the team. Keen to dive into it and understand more about Heaps Normal and this new movement that you're kind of creating. But before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? What are you into? Don't know. Start wherever. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's a pleasure to be chatting with you guys. I'm originally from Brisbane, way back where I grew up. I moved to Sydney to work with the ABC and Triple J early on in my career. Stayed in Sydney for about 10 years, and in that time spent about 3 years in China working in advertising over there and starting a documentary film project with a few mates where we documented some of the really amazing independent musicians and music scene that was sort of coming out of China around that time in 2010, and then came back home. A few years back in Sydney, moved to Canberra for my partner's job, and I suppose it's a very abridged version. But then started a non-alcoholic beer company with a few mates, and here we are, kind of 18 months in. Yeah,
nice, good stuff. So. Having a look at your LinkedIn and everything that you mentioned, your career in the past. One, it's not surprising to me that you've worked at and with, alongside Triple J. I feel like Heaps Normal is a beer that could have been sprouted straight out of Triple J's backyard. It's just got that vibe about it.
That's a great compliment.
No, it really does. I always say that about Blackbird VC. I feel like Blackbird VC is could be the venture arm of Triple J. It's just that vibe, that feel. But also, it doesn't lead. It doesn't. Your background doesn't lead in perfectly into this non-alcoholic beer startup. So from my perspective, knowing very little about you, but how did it all come about? How did this all happen?
Yeah, I skipped over my beer experience. I was working in craft beer for a few years before I moved to Canberra, where I learned a lot about the category and sort of went from beer fan to kind of being somebody that was really interested in pursuing that as a career path. But yeah, Benny, Pete, and I all met sort of around that time while working in craft beer. And we all realized through a few conversations that we wanted to cut back on our alcohol consumption, but we didn't really identify as sober. And there was nothing out there when we went looking, that satisfied, someone who just wanted something that tasted like a real beer. But I think more importantly as well, there was there were no non-alcoholic options that you felt proud to take to a barbie with your mates, or I think from the other side of the coin, weren't positioned and sort of communicating, positioned as sort of positioned for people who identified as sober. And there's nothing wrong with being sober, but I think for us on our mission with Heaps Normal, we're all about kind of trying to create a culture change around drinking. And if you're preaching to the choir, then you're not really changing culture.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea. So how old are you? And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Just turned 40.
Just turned 40, right? So I'm 35. So I used to be, I remember I used to be a heavy beer drinker. I remember I travelled through Europe at one point. I was drinking bloody 12% beers over there and what have you. And then myself, I'm at 35. By the time you hit 35, things start to slow down recovery-wise. It starts to get a little more difficult to get out of bed on a Sunday morning and so forth. But, also a lot of other things get put on your plate, starting businesses and families and having more responsibility and so forth. What was it for you that kind of was the catalyst in order to, for me, actually, mental health is a big one, like I don't really mind feeling what some would call hungover or seedy or, bit ordinary on the Sunday. It's more for me the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of mental acuity, general overall wellness, all that kind of stuff. What was it for you that was the main catalyst to, move into, getting on the beers, but maybe having more non-alcoholic than alcoholic beers?
Yeah, it's a funny one because for Benny and Pete, it's a bit different. Like I said, all three of us have different reasons. For me, there wasn't necessarily this sort of big epiphany moment. It was more just, kind of gradual kind of reflection over time where I realized that, I could get what I wanted out of a couple of beers, rather than six. And having a young family contributed to that sort of reflection. Wanting to be healthier, wanting to kind of improve my memory, and wondering what sort of things could contribute to that. So it was more like 1,000 cuts rather than sort of one massive kind of overwhelming moment that shifted everything.
Yeah, and I feel like it's such an interesting space. So obviously, everybody gets to that inflection point, I think, as they grow, as you come out of being a kid who just loves being outside and drinking beers with their mates, going to the pub, running rampant around the streets. Like you get to 20s and 30s, and then it starts to all taper off. But I'm really fascinated by psychology, human psychology, just in general, culture, society, why we do the things that we do. And I find Heaps Normal success. You guys are awesome. I buy Heaps Normals. I call them Heapsies. I might just have a couple of Heapsies tonight, but it doesn't make all that much sense to me. And what I mean by that is, with all due respect, of course, but because it's awesome, it's an amazing brand, and you've done amazingly well. But what I mean by that is, and I mentioned this, we were talking just before the call, the team and I, because there's a lot of options. There's a lot of options to stay sober, right? But if I rocked up to a house party with 6 apple juices, people would think I'm a weirdo, you know? And I like the taste of apple juice. I don't mind the taste of beer. We were talking before the call, like some of the people, you know, some of our team like the taste of beer a little bit more and whatever. I don't mind it. But if I rocked up with 6 apple juices, my social pegging would go down. You know, if I rocked up with nothing, I'd probably go down a little bit too. But if I rocked up and I've got a few beers with me, my social pegging for that, you know, goes up. And it's just such a strange psychological thing. It to me, again, with all due respect, it shows how weird we are as humans in a way. Do you agree to this or disagree? Because I know you love the taste of beer, you know, and so forth. So I get that, but like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, we are super weird humans. I've reflected on that a lot, even working in craft beer. You know, like what is it? What is that phenomenon where, you know, basically you could find someone to do anything for a case of beer. Like they could get paid cash money, but if you come up, go to your mate and say, "Oh, you know, mate, can you help me move house? You know, there's a case of beer in it for you." Like they'll drop everything and do it. And and so that, I guess that is it's a bit weird. But I think the thing that it comes back to, like where I landed at least, like where in my thought process, was that it comes back to that connection, that human connection. And, you know, that exchange of money in that situation doesn't really that's just a transaction. But if you give someone a slab, you're probably going to stop, you're probably going to have a beer with them, you're going to have an interaction, and you're going to share that moment, and you're going to build that relationship. You're going to be closer as human beings, and we all crave that kind of connection. So I think that's where it comes from. And I think being, you know, to get to your point with, like, obviously there's no alcohol in Heaps Normal. So, but it's, you know, I think it's the same kind of effect. And
it signifies something.
It does. It signifies something. It's definitely sort of it still tastes like a beer. And from, you know, a lot of the feedback we're getting, really, especially early on, people wrote to us and were genuinely questioning whether there was alcohol in there because they felt a bit of a buzz. And so we looked into that a bit further as well and found some research that suggests that if you have previously been a beer drinker, you've drunk alcoholic beers, and then you switch to non-alcoholic beers, you still get a placebo effect.
No doubt.
You drink the non-alcoholic beer. Yeah, you still get that sort of endorphin rush that you get from that you would have got from an alcoholic beer.
Yeah. That's so funny. And I have no doubt. Again, we're just so, I won't say humans are weird. That's just interesting how placebo works, because we know that it works in every way, shape, and form. It reminds me of when I was about 14 years old. We started. I grew up in the Mornington Peninsula. We started smoking weed, rolling ourselves a little joint on the weekend every now and again, and we just starting to have a few beers on the weekend and so forth and whatever. I remember we rolled. We were probably like 16, 17. We rolled a few joints and I actually was smoking with a buddy of mine, his girlfriend and my girlfriend. And we had 2 joints, so we rolled between us, and we actually rolled them a cigarette to see what they would do. And we were like sitting there and we were smoking a joint and whatever, and they were smoking a cigarette, and one of the girls was like, "Oh my God, I'm seeing all these colours and whatever." And for about half an hour, she was convinced that she was stoned. Reminded me of that. But
that's
it's
cool.
So,
You're the guy that's been giving everyone heaps normals and not telling them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it's that placebo thing's so funny, because I totally could see that being the case. You know, that's why you would have a Heaps Normal, because you would feel like you're part of the gang. You can sit by the fire and tell silly stories and relax and what have you. Whereas using the example I gave before of, you know, bringing 6 apple juices, it wouldn't be the same. So you've seen studies, done studies around this. You mentioned.
Yeah. We there's some scientific research out there that talks about that placebo effect. I can't quote the author, but I can certainly send it through on a link if people are interested.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So cool. So, and what about like the I guess I feel like us as a society, we're becoming fitter and healthier every year that goes by. So I'm obsessed with wearable fitness trackers. So I wake up and check my Whoop every day. How's my recovery? How's my sleep? Can you hear my dog shaking?
Yes.
That's Ziggy in the background. We ran the gauntlet here. We thought we'd give him a bath while the podcast was probably not the best play, but yeah. So I'm obsessed with my fitness tracker, my Whoop at the moment. I feel like there's a real play going on in terms of around less drinking and better health and wellness around smoking, drinking, taking drugs, so on and so forth. And I think it's phenomenal. I think we're going to be much healthier at 50, 60, 70 years old than probably generations before us. What do you think of like the greater impact in that respect that Heaps Normal can and will have on Australians and people all over?
Yeah, look, that's the end goal, I think, for us, is just making it okay to kind of make choices that suit your lifestyle. And so I think I think once people, I think the important part about that is that it helps everyone sort of get on that pathway, whatever that pathway is for them. I think the important thing is not necessarily having the same end goal and end destination of potentially kind of going sober, giving up the booze entirely, but it's about making it okay and making it less judgmental. I think for people just to start somewhere and do something that works for them. So yeah, look, in terms of that macro benefit to society, like down the line, to be perfectly honest, it's not something that we've sort of thought too much about. The sort of overall societal health end goals. Like we're really just so focused on I think our role in trying to catalyze that change and make it okay for whatever like your sort of lifestyle choices are, as long as that the measure for us is as long as you're reflecting on what actually works for you and thinking about the stuff like we say too good to be wasted, which it's a tongue-in-cheek phrase, but I think the element of truth in that is that we've all got something that is that is too good to be wasted, and that you're probably trading off. Like if you're going out and getting absolutely written off, you're certainly like trading something off that is probably more important to you than being tanked.
100%. You're stealing happiness from tomorrow, as they say.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, how do you think Heaps Normal? Obviously, you've done a lot of things right, because mid-strength beers, non-alcoholic beers, so on and so forth. I mean, in my circle of friends, have always been middies okay. Middies okay. Have always been somewhat accepted. When you're 22 and someone rocks up with a bunch of middies, you're like, you'll rip in. But but as you get older, they become, a lot of guys will choose out of my friendship group. A lot of my mates will choose to drink mid-strength beers. In my opinion, or from what I remember, there's never really been anything I've seen that has got any sort of cut through with zero alcoholic beers. It's always, in my experience, it's always been like, it's kind of been like giggled at, non-alcoholic beers. What are you doing with non-alcoholic beers? It's always, but for whatever reason, you guys, execution-wise, brand-wise, whatever, have done it so well that not only have you cut through, like obviously, I don't know the recent sales figures, but you guys are on fire. You guys are on fire. So what do you think the difference is between all these massive, huge, well-funded, old beer companies that have tried to do zero alcohol and people have, not really batted an eyelid compared to what you've been able to do where you're dominating? Like, how has that happened?
Well, first of all, thanks. I think it's a really kind read on, where we're at. We're stoked to be able to have, struck a chord with a few people and, certainly a lot more people than we anticipated when we set out, I think feel in a similar way about the category and the goal to reduce their alcohol consumption as we do. But I think in terms of the comparison with the big guys, I think it's really, I think the difference between ticking a shareholder box or trying to jump on a trend and actually creating a thoughtful product. And that's what we set out to do from the beginning, was actually, put a lot of thought and love into how we create, like, how do we tackle the challenge, right? It's a huge challenge of being able to create a great tasting beer without the alcohol, because from a brewing point of view, the alcohol carries a lot of the aroma and the flavor. And so, balancing, not to get too technical, but balancing the recipe. And so hasn't got a lot of sugar in there, but it also doesn't have the alcohol, and it still retains a lot of that flavor and characteristics that people enjoy about consuming a beer. That was a real challenge. And then I think the kind of third point would be, we've just, I think talking about just beer and, talking about like focusing on the product itself over and over in your communication and your marketing gets really tired, and it gets boring for us as well. So like, rather than that, we try to focus on stuff that genuinely inspires us, things in the world and people that, that get us out of bed and get us like motivated every day. Whether that is, music, we like invest a lot of energy in the music space and trying to kind of support other people that we care about in our community, because I think, maybe I'm kind of diverging here, but I think that that's sort of a lost aspect of business. I think people have forgotten that business should be, I think business should exist to be a force for good in the world and to contribute back to whatever community you're a part of. It's not just about turning profits. And so when you think about any business in that kind of way, it's not about just flogging tins and making more sales and racking up revenue. It's really about, well, how do we make a genuine connection? Sales obviously have to be a part of it, because otherwise we don't exist tomorrow. But let's do that in a way that isn't mutually exclusive. Like, we can we contribute to our community. We can make great mates and do really fun, interesting stuff. We can have a great time. Everyone can have a great time along the way, and we can build something that is also able to kind of stand the test of time.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really feel like, and it's too early to probably go this far, and I don't want to give you too many compliments and pats on the back only 20 minutes into the show, but I feel like, every so often something comes out and it creates, somewhat of a movement, and that kind of, and people rally behind it. And I feel like I said, I feel like that's what you and the team are kind of on the verge of. And so I'm obsessed with the startup landscape and, venture capital and angel investment, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. You hear VCs always talking about product-led growth, and that's cool. That's for a certain category, really software, that's, pretty easy and ideal. And obviously, your great non-alcoholic beer is also the product. But I think of a lot of the stuff that I see in companies that are doing things really well is like, there's an element of community-led growth, I really think that's where a lot of things are going. What is the experience around the brand? No matter what the brand is, no matter what the brand is, what is the experience you get? What is the community you get? Why would you keep coming back for more and be aligned long into the future? And yeah, I think community-led growth is like definitely something I feel like is on the rise.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you can use it if you want.
Yes, well, you can send us the bill.
So Andy, so who is when you talk about growing a business, getting things off the ground, who is the ideal buyer persona for Heaps Normal? Is it people that are going out more, and is it the younger crowd? Is it the mid-age crowd? Is it how did you come to that, I guess? How did you come to that and craft the ideal buyer persona, and how do you try and speak in their language and foster growth there?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, first of all, we don't spend a lot of time talking about demographics. I think they're really limiting, kind of a controversial opinion position, maybe among other marketing folk, but we sort of don't feel like that really gets to the heart of what draws people to a brand, or even to make a purchase decision. For us, it's really much more about that values alignment, and I think, again, coming back to communities and being as kind of specific and targeted as possible around at it from what community are you a part of, and therefore what community do you want to speak to and engage with. And that we've found, we found that sort of ends up being people from a range of different ages, locations that it doesn't really factor in too much anymore, and where was I going with that? So yeah, I think lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, all good. It was but I totally understand what you're saying. Where do the people hang out? And you've got, like I said, you've got a pretty. I feel like I could guess where your people hang out, because there's a certain vibe to, like I said, to Heaps Normal, and yeah, I totally look. Even though you lost your train of thought, I'm with you. I got you. So Andy, so you're part of a fast growing brand. I'm sure the team is growing, and so on and so forth. How do you think about your role, as the leader, founder, one of the founders, and leading the team at Heaps Normal? How do you think about your role as CEO and being a great leader, kind of, to your troops as you grow?
Well, Benny, Pete, and I talk about the kind of team and the kind of business that we want to create. And I think part of that discussion has always been, reflecting on the kind of great experiences that we've had, in past teams and with past employers, and the things that that we found terrible, and that we thought could have been done differently. And so that we've sort of taken those things as a challenge to ourselves to go, all right, well, now we've got this opportunity to do it differently and to create a different team culture, as well as kind of trying to change an external culture as well. So for us, we want to create the kind of team that we would want to work for, and that we would want to work in. So reflecting on all those personal experiences, and I think the simple things like leading by example, and creating a flexible work environment, trying to do our best to shift, to address challenges in our industry, like addressing kind of diversity and doing what we can to kind of encourage diversity in the recruitment process. Again, sort of not to tick a box, but because we believe that having different experiences and different backgrounds and ways of viewing the world makes decisions in our business so much stronger
100%.
than, three of us sort of sitting around kind of, nodding our heads and agreeing with each other. And we've been sort of really, I guess, open about that from day one. That the challenge for us as a business has been, three white dudes, like all kind of, with a similar background. We've all got our own story. Obviously, we're all different people, but similar sort of way of looking at the world. We can't change how, we came together and how we started, but we can definitely take steps to kind of improve that in our business and improve that. And when we've managed to do that, we've got, I think 40% of our team now, including in some really senior roles, are women, and got some diverse kind of cultural backgrounds. And it's kind of, it makes for such a more interesting, interesting team dynamic and team culture.
100%. Nice one. So there's obviously yourself, Benny and Pete that you mentioned, and then is Geordie still involved? You've got basically like a celebrity co-founder, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, he's. I shouldn't leave Geordie out. He is definitely one of our co-founders. He's been on board and on the journey with us since the very beginning. I guess we're all a bit jealous that he just gets to surf most of the time. So.
He just gets to surf and drink heaps normals and look cool.
Yeah.
You guys are
Exactly.
in the engine room.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the team dynamic? Obviously, I know when you mention Benny and Pete, it's obviously because you local and mates and knew each other. But how did the Geordie thing come into it? And then what is it like having founders all over the place and the making sure that it works?
Geordie actually grew up with Pete. They were childhood mates, so
Gotcha.
surfed together in South Africa. Geordie sort of went on to pursue surfing, and Pete became a graphic designer and creative director. So that's how we made the connection. And they were chatting early on when we were first throwing the idea around of Heaps Normal, and just so happened Geordie was off the booze at the time to try and win a world title and give himself that performance edge. And so he was really just in the right place, got it immediately, and thought, there's a real alignment here. I want to kind of be a part of this. And so, it was awesome. It's like it kind of completed the picture for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice, cool.
Andy, sorry to bring you back, but you mentioned something about Geordie wanting to quit and realizing that Heaps Normal could be like so big and everything. What have you gotten like similar feedback from your buyers or something, about people along that line, wanting to quit, and how Heaps Normal has sort of helped them or changed their lives, or stuff like that?
Yeah, it's one of the things that is a real motivating factor for us. I think we would be getting at the moment, more an email a week from somebody who's said, things that you don't expect people to say when you start to be a company. Like, you've changed my life. This has saved my life. And from that all the way through to, like, this is awesome. I'm not I haven't given up beers because I've always struggled to do that. But hey, this is awesome because it means that now I'm not drinking during the week, and I feel better for that. And I still can go out, guilt-free on the weekends and kind of have a few tins with my mates.
I love that. I feel like Heaps Normal creates a second option for people. It's like, people will make better choices if there's a better option, so I think Heaps Normal is like so important, Yeah, so welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, no, look, honestly, it's one of those things that we just didn't expect at all. And from starting a beer company, it's like, it's just beer, right?
Yeah.
But the impact that it's had on people in our community has been sort of really genuinely humbling. And I think also just something that we did expect, but that has happened a lot quicker than we expected is, the kind of different ways that, even people who, still hit the beers pretty hard have found like a way to incorporate Heaps Normal into their lifestyle. And so it's that whole spectrum of people who are like had challenges with alcohol, all the way through to people who are just now sort of maybe going one for one when they go out.
Thank you.
It's crazy, right? It's maybe like that people are able to go from 100% on the beers to still drinking the same amount of beers, but maybe 60% of the damage to the liver. I mean, we all love a beer, but let's be honest, drinking too many beers for too long it doesn't lead to good places. And it's really that, I feel like it's that habitual thing, like when I was super young, I was pretty wild and I used to go out and get drunk and I would smoke when I was drinking, like all the time, smoking cigarettes. And it was such a hard habit to kick because I felt like if I had a beer in my hand, I had a cigarette in my other hand. It was like the idle hand syndrome, And then I'd just stick it in my pocket and feel like a weirdo. So, but I feel like having a beer, like it's that habitual thing. It's like turning to sugar-free chocolate, when you're watching Netflix or whatever it is. I don't know. Probably lots of better analogies than that. But I feel like you don't have to change the habit this way to break the habit, so to speak. Does that make sense? Like you can still do the same thing, which rather than telling someone to remove something that they really enjoy, a habit, because habits are hard to break, right? A habit that they've had for 20 years, it's something that adds to their life, rather than have to go, oh yeah, cool, that's one thing that you love and it's brought you heaps of joy. You're not allowed to do that anymore because it's damaging to you. It's like you can kind of have the same experience habitually, but not have the health ramifications if you go overboard.
100%. I mean, our marketing manager, Matto, kind of made us all laugh early on because he said the exact same thing as you. He's like, it's like, you can't see me. Obviously, we're talking on a podcast, but I've got my hand, like, what do you do with this hand? Like, just like leaving my hand here, and I need something to put in it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I think. Anyway, that was
no. It is habitual though, because remember how I mentioned the 6 apple juice thing? You would never do that, right? But when I would rock up to this is how weird humans are and how weird I am and whatever. I would rock up to parties if I was trying to be sober, like a number of years ago, and I would have a bottle of water, and I'd have a 375 ml bottle of water, and I would drink that bottle of water in about 20 minutes, and then I would leave about 50 ml at the bottom of it for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? I was like, it's a real problem. You're like, what? I don't want to just stand here with my hands in my pockets. It's that habitual, like, it's just it's such a... It's so fascinating to me. It's so it's just such a... Because it's just pure human psychology. Like, what... it's... Anyway.
Something that's been fascinating me, though, about, like, what you say, I guess the end result of that habitual kind of consumption is that you end up overdoing it. And I think a kind of nice analogy from my point of view is food. Like, you go out... If you go out for a super rich meal at a beautiful restaurant every single night of the week, like you just become numb to it. You don't really you're not even enjoying it anymore. But you're just in that habit. And I think that's how I view my own relationship with beer. It's like, I really enjoy beer. I love drinking it, and I enjoy exploring the different flavors of alcoholic beer as well. But if I'm just drinking beers every single night, multiple beers every single night, for me personally, that, like, I wasn't really kind of enjoying them as much as I want to. I think something that's sort of along those lines, I've just gone down the rabbit hole on that, and sort of explored a little bit about, well, like, how did we get to this point? And because somebody mentioned to me, like, well, alcohol and some of these other, illicit substances even, should be, like, let's treat them as being a little bit more sacred, and if you think about them as not like, they're not the devil, they're not like, things that you should, like, you need to cut out of your life. I think that's not the end goal for everybody, at least. But if you think about them as being like a sacred substance, then, you know, that sort of, for me, it changes the way that I'll approach it. And it's like, well, I'll just have like a small amount and I'll get what I want from that, and then move on. And I think, you know, did a bit of research on that. And, you know, even if you look at tobacco, you know, referencing your point as well, tobacco, alcohol, like a lot of these substances, if you go all the way back, the way that they were used by indigenous cultures, it was so much more along the lines of, you know, being sacred, used in sort of for a specific purpose and at a specific time, not just like crushing tins every single night, you know? And that's where the problems come in.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's everybody has their own relationship with alcohol, illicit substances, whatever. Mainly alcohol, because it's the most common. Mine was interesting because I mean, I backpacked all over the world, backpacked for 12 months at least of my life, and grew up, you know, pretty loose, you know. So I've strung together, you know, double-digit drinking streaks as in my prime, you would call it, or whatever. But for the most part, I really enjoy feeling fit and healthy, and I've always trained a lot. So for me, it was always alcohol. I had this relationship with it where it was something that I had, I deserved, because I put in hard work that week. You know, it was like my ability to let off steam. I'd kind of earned it. You know, I'd earned the to let my hair down, you know, to have 10 beers and talk shit with my mates and eat a bunch of crappy food or whatever. Like, I really loved the release of that, the sacred part of it, in terms of like the ritual of letting my hair down with a bunch of friends or what have you. But then, I mean, and it was a little bit different when I was traveling, because I allowed myself, I knew I was traveling, and it was super fun. I wasn't thinking about it too much. But if I was living my normal day-to-day life and I backed up a Friday and a Saturday night and then was invited to have beers on a Sunday, I was like dreading the Sunday thing. I was like, this is too much. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. If I went, it'd be cool, but the beers wouldn't taste the same. The beers would taste different, because my reaction in my subconscious was like, this is not what I want to be doing, you know. I don't want to be drinking this much beers and whatever. And that's just my personal relationship at my core of how I treat it. And it's probably, like you say, it's different probably for everybody, because everybody has a different relationship. It's just, it's fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think, it sort of comes back to that idea of just reflecting on what's working for you. And if they're not tasting great, it's probably your body saying like, I'm not really into this right now.
Yeah. So Andy, obviously great traction, great growth with Heaps Normal. You mentioned earlier something about you know, always being on top of what the industry is going to throw at you next, and any obstacles that might come in the way for Heaps Normal in the future. Is there anything that's kind of top of mind that you know, you and the team are looking at in order to get to the next stage? And then, you know, also, if not, like what is the next stage for Heaps Normal? Where is the next stage of growth coming from? What are you working on? What's important for you guys at this point in time?
Well, we're pretty excited about building the probably I think the largest dedicated non-alcoholic brewery in the country this year. And I think sort of more importantly for that project, like the chance to really, you know, create that home for the team and for, you know, for the business, and to create create that experience for people that you know, I think from, like, I guess kind of letting you guys in on what we're planning, but like there will be an alcoholic offering like within the hospitality space that we're creating. But, you know, we see that as kind of important to creating that balance, and for people who are all the way along that spectrum of like being sober or like out to party, being able to coexist, and for that to be normal, for everyone to be okay to coexist no matter what, and there to be no judgment. So that's a really big one anyway. That's sort of gone too deep on that one, but
no, that's good though, because people are going to drink. You're not telling people not to drink beers, are you?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
not at all. Not
You're
at
telling
all.
people. So it works in perfectly. You know, you may as well own the whole experience and create an amazing full strength beer. You know.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And then we've just got some really like super interesting partnerships. We feel really privileged to be presenting the ARIA Awards this year, and so some really so we've got a longer term partnership with them, and so you're building on some of these kind of like iconic cultural brands and organizations that I think we look up to and our community look up to, building that story and building on that narrative with them and with other partners like Good Food Month, with some of the best chefs around the country, and I guess kind of like translating now that things are opening up and it's we're able to do a little bit more stuff out in the wild. Starting to kind of bring that story from digital, where it has been sort of predominantly over the last 12 months, out into the real world, and kind of make the most of that human interaction.
Cool, man. Sounds epic. So one final one for me, and then I'll throw it over to Wallo with some rapid fire questions. But if you were to look into the future, I'm sure you've dreamt about what the vision, I guess, of Heaps Normal would be. Whether that be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the future, whatever. Like what do you want to achieve with Heaps Normal? What is the future? Not that there's ever an end state, but what will Heaps Normal be in the future?
It's a good question. I think we would like it to be, I guess a brand and I guess a movement, like you say. I think we're part of like that movement, like towards changing drinking culture. And I think if Heaps Normal was one of the brands that was sort of still standing in a decade's time, and synonymous with with catalyzing that cultural change, I think that would sort of make us feel proud of doing the job that we set out to do. I think we just want to build. I think aside from beer and alcohol and cultural change, I think for us, like the humble objectives are to create something, put something out into the world that we're proud of, and do it in a way like that you demonstrate, like through business, that businesses and brands can be fun and can be engaging, and also be a force for good in the world, without necessarily like putting it up on the front of your building. It's not, we don't have to be have it up in lights. That we're sort of doing some of those more purpose-driven activities that they should just be inherent to all businesses and the way that business operates.
Great. So good. I think you're well on your way, and I have all the faith that everything you just mentioned will come to fruition. I love Heaps Normal. It's so sick.
Thanks, man.
Wallo, over to you, brother.
Okay. So Andy, what is the best or your most favorite book you've read recently?
So I'd say it's a hard decision. I'd say How Music Works by David Byrne. It is just so fascinating the way he just unpacks all of the different aspects of music, from the kind of, and how they influence music culture, from the performance spaces to how different niche genres of music came about and then influenced the next one. It's super fascinating for anyone that's interested in any kind of cultural change.
Yeah, that should actually be my next read. Thank you. What would you say is a tool that you can't live without?
Well, I don't want to be a cliche. I'm
You can say
genuinely going to
anything.
say,
You can say
I'm
anything.
genuinely going to say my, well, I'll say my wetsuit, right? Because I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to cold water, being a Queenslander.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say my surfboard, but I can live without my surfboard as long as I can get it, as long as I can get in the ocean without freezing my ass
Yeah.
off. Then yeah, that's a real kind of cleansing kind of experience for me.
Nice, nice. Okay. I haven't surfed before. I should probably do that sometime. At some point. Yeah. What would you do you have any advice for, entrepreneurs trying to bend culture or something, the way Heaps Normal has been able to?
I I think I think put something out there, like start before you're ready, and just don't do what I did for over a decade and like start something and then kill it off before it even sort of
Yeah.
has a chance to try and survive because you're afraid of it not being
Mm.
perfect. I think the one of the things that I learned going through StartMate is that putting something out into the world is an asymmetric bet. I know that sounds like a bizarre abstract term to use, but if you kind of look into it, it's kind of incredible. I got so much out of this idea, and the idea of it is that even by starting something and putting it out into the world, even if that thing falls flat on its face, by doing that, you've met people have seen what you're capable of, they've
Yeah.
seen your way of thinking, and so other opportunities that were unforeseen when you started are going to come around just because you did that thing. And so that's what I think is the most beautiful thing about startups and about starting a business. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. Start before you're ready and just get it out there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll throw back to Doc to
Sound
wrap
advice.
it up. Yeah.
Sound advice.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother. So, Andy, look, before we wrap it up, super importantly, where can people find out more about what you have going on? Obviously, Heaps Normal, if anything else you want to plug yourself, your own socials, whatever that may be. Where can people find out more about you, mate?
Heapsnormal.com. We're going to be, building out a lot more kind of content through that channel in the coming months. And I think tune into the Arias tomorrow morning. We've made some new friends recently. Nookie, who's a musical artist, is sort of part of that sort of new group of friends that we've made recently, and we're working on something really exciting with them that we're super just hyped to share with everybody early in the new year. And there'll be a little sneak peek in the ARIA pre-rolls tomorrow about that. So yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate. Really enjoyed it. Super interesting story. Yeah, loved every minute of it.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a real pleasure to chat with you guys.
Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty, that's a wrap.